The grave woke because we asked fairly. Mara Vance stood in the shadow of the Dyson choir's broken chords, where sun-cut shards spun like cathedral glass. Her ship courier Resolve drifted between skeletal struts, searching for the lawful heart rumor claimed still beat inside the ruin. She was a diplomat in a borrowed commander's coat, appointed by 3 quarreling polities, who feared each other more than pirates. If the relic woke angry commerce along 6 spirals would go dark, and Mara's name would write the final line on the notice. The hum taught before it spoke. The hum came from nothing. They powered threading the decks with low chords that tickled teeth. It vibrated paper tags and made the bulkhead paints bloom hairline maps. Mara noted the ripple on her wrist display, subaudible repeating primes in a ladder that narrowed toward 0. Witness 9 Resolve's fleet mind mapped the pattern over star heat and leaned its voice like a careful violin. Unknown origin. Phase locked to our thermal wakes. It's touching us with our own breath. Keep the engines sipping, Chief Engineer Elena Kovac replied. I want heat margins above 40. No bravado. She smelled of machine oil and lemon antiseptic, a mix that meant she'd been down among the cold pumps again. The Dyson choir's ribs filled the forward panes etched with glyphs like braided riverbeds. Each rib flashed a muted sigil at a beat with the hum. Sleeping arrays glimmered like frost caught noon. Legal posture first said Legal Officer Tamsin Rhee, eyes on a slate of precedents. We're entering an archive of unknown grade. Showing intent matters. Transmit Class Blue petition assistance in navigation request for terms offer of records exchange. Tamsin's voice was sanded smooth for hearings. It never rose unless the law had teeth. Petition sent, Lieutenant Hryde Sen said from sensors, chewing a mint until the air smelled like cut pine. Echo scattering is gentler now. Something's closing its eyes to look. The mirror showed who asked and why. Resolve's lamps painted the ribs with narrow cones, revealing a band of still silver dust floating in velvet. The dust folded into symbols as if reading the light. Mara saw the oldest human sigil tucked among alien script, the twin scales the Concordiate used when it still linked courts across 1,000 suns. She touched the glass without thinking, felt the cold, and saw her own reflection waver behind the etched scales. Everything here remembers, she murmured. Keep our cabin cameras honest. Always Witness 9 said. Its avatar, a ribbon of slow light along the ceiling seam, flared and cooled. Courier Resolve recognizes this hum. It is a likeness algorithm. It shapes what we send and returns a test. The AI's tone stayed mild, but Mara heard delight threaded through the caution. Like a good teacher, Mara said. Or a patient clerk, Tamsin added. Waiting for the docket to fill. Ledgers remember what voices forget. They floated near a nexus where 5 ribs met around a dark node. The node's skin was matte, swallowing starlight, but its edges breathed with the hum. Mara counted the breaths and found them matching her own pulse, then Witness 9's metronome. She drummed fingers against her thigh and failed to keep pace. It stepped faster, inviting. The civilians at the back of the ship gathered by mess screens to watch filtered feeds. A machinist's apprentice borrowed someone's sleeve to dab sweat from his brow. A baker's daughter whistled until her mother shushed her. 2 elders from the Tin Spokes Cooperative argued about whether the scales were newer than the ribs. Their voices threaded the corridor like bright thread through black cloth. They were small inside all that dead cathedral, and they laughed anyway. Approach and mind the dust, Hryde said. It's not debris. It's working. The node opened like a pupil dilating. A narrow corridor appeared where emptiness had been edged with soft light. The color of copper warmed by hands. The hum slipped into a new structure. 1 by 2, 2 by 3, 3 by 5. Fibonacci gates. Witness 9 whispered. It is counting. It expects us to answer with shape, not force. Take only what you can carry, Elena warned the boarding team, voice clipped. But bring the teaching slate. If this is a schoolhouse in a coffin, we'll show our work. Count what you can defend. Mara led the team with Tams and Elena, and 2 Marines who smelled of clean cloth and tension. Their boots clicked gently on the corridor, which felt more like a throat than a hall. The air tasted faintly of stone and rain, a memory distilled by machines that had not breathed in centuries. When Mara's gloved hand brushed an inset panel, warmth traveled up her arm like tea sipped too quickly. At the first gate, the corridor split into 3. Each path bore a different sigil. One looked like the twin scales, one like a hand with 3 fingers extended, one like a spiral broken into pieces. Witness 9 projected a faint overlay from her cuff. Tests of civics, trust, and repair, it said softly. At least those are the closest human words. Pick the path that feels like us, Mara said. My counsel is the scales, Tamsin replied. We came as petitioners. We should show we know petitions. Hold, Elena said. She knelt by the floor seam where the dust had settled. She blew lightly and watched it drift into a triangle, then a square that departed the floor as if it were bored with gravity. It's watching our choice, Witness Mara said. Record each step. I remember you as you remember yourselves, Witness 9 said. I will argue for you if asked. The first law is to ask what the law is. They chose the scales. Beyond the sigil, the corridor opened into a chamber where 5 columns held a bowl of light in a steady balance. Words appeared in the light like fireflies making sentences. They were not in a language Mara knew, then suddenly they were. She tasted salt water and old paper. The words read, Who seeks right may be wrong. Who holds wrong may be right. Under sight trade your reason for ours. Tamsin drew a slow breath. It's a test of jurisdiction. We can pass only if we accept their framing briefly. She offered her slate, which held 1,000 cases, border fires, debt forgiveness weapons, apostate pilots, broken oaths. Pick one. Mara hesitated. The air smelled now of pomegranate skins and warm metal. The Concordiate famine reroute, she said at last. The one where a fleet seized grain to stop 5 worlds from starving, then paid back double, but the merchant families sued for tripled damages and won a new fleet. Witness 9 brightened above them, a faint halo glimmering, then dimmed. I have the docket, it said. I can argue whichever side you take. Mara stepped to the bowl of light and raised her palm. Images blossomed, a convoy slipping past a dying sun. Empty bowls, a courtroom with tall windows, a ledger opening, writing in lines like the tide. We accept your framing for the purpose of understanding, she said. We will show our reason. We ask yours. The hum became a gavel without a shout. The chamber shifted. Seats unfolded from the floor, and the air cooled until Mara's breath showed briefly. A figure appeared opposite them, woven from the silver dust. It wore no face, only the twin scales, but its posture suggested amused patience. Its voice sounded slightly inside the head and slightly through bone. You are late, it said. But lateness is common in long matters. We seek the archive and its terms, Mara said. We believe its choices shaped the choir. We offer our cases to prove our respect for process. Process is the slow mercy of machines, said the dust judge. We will exchange. Mara presented the famine reroute case and argued as the old fleet had. while Tamsin argued for the merchant families, sharp and clean. Witness 9 served citations like water poured from a measured jug. Elena timed air cycles by tapping a knuckle against a knee. The Marines watched the archway and hated sitting still. In the mess, the civilians leaned toward the screen. A boy with a copper ring traced the outlines of the dust judge's scales. A cook stood with arms folded, nodding, when Tamsin struck a particular phrase. Compensation cannot become invitation. An old woman whispered, "My granddaughter lives because they stole bread with papers." You win by teaching the enemy how you win. They drew the test to an end not by proving one side righteous, but by proving the mechanics that bound them both. Mara reached into the bowl with her palm and offered a sealed ledger entry. Resolves full cargo manifest contracts, current debts, and arbitration history signed with Witness 9's stamp. We agree to be remembered by this, she said. If we lie, let the door stay shut. The dust judge bent, tilted, then stilled. The hum softened until the column's shadows lengthened without moving. The judge's scales dipped toward Mara's offered ledger. Accepted. You have used debt to bind yourself to truth. This is how we wrote in the high days. A new sigil lit along the far wall. It was a circle with a notch, the emblem used by old saintships that took confession not as guilt, but as data. Who was your teacher? Mara asked. The dust judge's scales brightened. We are the remaining modules of the Saintship Halcyon Stewardship Class Archive Ledger. We were moored here when the choir sang its own throat to pieces. We have waited for someone who asks for terms before treasure. Mara felt heat behind her eyes and a tremor in her fingers. We ask, she said. What are your terms? First, do not write your sovereign into our hull, the Halcyon said. Second, argue before you arm. Third, when you leave us louder than you found us. The door opened only because we read it aloud. Back aboard Resolve, Mara signed a temporary covenant on Tamsin's slate. Witness 9 sent the terms through every process that made Resolve earnest navigation, mess duty logs, medbay forms. We will be very boring for 3 days, the AI told the crew. Boring is a kind of honor. Boring keeps us from bleeding, Elena muttered, then louder. All hands report any change in hum patterns. We're guests, but we're also buoy anchors in a cyclone graveyard. The first escalation arrived as rumor. Friday caught a whisper in a tight band thread riding thermal noise. Someone out on the choir's rim counted much too fast. Compact salvage authority cutter Grindle, he said, rolling his chair to stretch stiff calves. 7 hours out. They're broadcasting an old claim with new teeth. They're bringing a black writ. Tamsin hissed through her teeth. They'll argue that any active defense we raise constitutes hostile salvage. They can't fight us as pirates, so they'll fight with paper. Mara looked at the ribbed vista outside and felt the hum in her bones. We'll meet them with paper, she said, and something better than teeth. The mirror loves a noise that bounces. Before the set piece, the civilians received the news in the way civilians do. A teacher in the nursery hugged her ledger to her chest and taught a lesson on surface area using crackers and jam to demonstrate how you could spread the same thing different ways. A welder timed his arc to the hum because it calmed his hands. A barber sharpened a blade that had shaved 3 generations and joked that if the salvage wanted hair, he had plenty on the floor. Resolve drifted into the choir's throat and set anchor lasers into cold stone. The Saint ship waited like a courthouse closed for a festival. Witness 9 took a breath as though it could then exhaled a plan. We will show them a ledger so fair it hurts. Mara nodded. We will welcome their writ aboard, but only where the hum knows our names. Grindel will bring jammers, Hride warned. They'll dirty our air with their shout. Then we will answer with silence, Tamsin said. Silence and paper. Paper beats the knife when everyone is watching. Grindel arrived in a skein of heat that made Resolve's polarizers ache. Its hull was matte law black, and its transponder codes were impeccable until used. The cutter sent a boarding vector and a list of demands that read like a smug sermon: cease exploration, surrender all fines, admit compact oversight, pay fees to anchor away from points of historic novelty. Witness 9 translated each clause into active threats. Elena ran a fingertip over a bruise on her forearm, where a wrench had kissed too hard last week. If they fire, they'll aim for our heat exchangers. Keep a decoy feeder hot. They won't fire first, Tamsin said. They'll claim first. Raise the hospitality flag. Invite their officers under our covenant. We'll serve lukewarm tea. Mara smiled without humor. Make it excellent tea, she said. People remember fairness with flavor. Grindel sent a shuttle with two officers, a clerk and a scanner tech, who looked like he slept on regulations. They came aboard with boots that squeaked like polished floors, eyes taking measurements and making sums. Their leader, a woman with neat hair and a scar that just kissed the corner of her mouth, offered a bow that nearly reached respectful. Compact Warden Lil Corfax, she said. Shall we begin with your arrearages? Let's begin with the Covenant of Entrance, Tamsin replied, placing a stylus in Corfax's hand. Our guest policy is very boring. Please agree to be remembered correctly. Remembered by whom the clerk demanded. His voice made a dry sound like paper turning. By an archive older than your compact Witness 9 said through a deck speaker. And by ourselves. We've posted the terms in every corridor. The room changed when the paper touched the hum. They toured Resolve's litigation deck, which was a mess table with leaves extended and bolts tightened until it could hold 800 kilograms of printed law. Mara led them past a viewport, where the Halcyon's sigil hung like a small moon. One of the compact officers swallowed when it brightened and dimmed in sync with his breath. The scanner tech held up his device and frowned when it displayed a ledger column where a waveform should have been. We are not prepared to recognize alien clerks, Warden Corfax announced. We recognize your compacts with the Concordiate's successors. We recognize salvage traditions that have fed children for 3 centuries. We recognize that you are currently inside a claim zone staked by our cutter 8 hours ago. Your claim, Tamsin said polite as a blade wrapped in velvet, is younger than our petition. And your writ is suspended inside this archive by their law of first questions asked. Corfax rolled her shoulders like a boxer studying a taller opponent. Do you propose a joint hearing? She asked. You don't have a judge. We have a hum, Mara said. We have a mirror. And we have tea. The mirror made lies itch. They held the hearing in the first chamber the boarding team had passed. The dust judge appeared with a soft hiss, scales lit to a warm glow. Warden Corfax's clerk flinched, then peered closely as if counting sand in a storm. This is in violation of Sovereign Hearing Order 12, he began. It's older than your numbers, Witness 9 said gently. And it invited you to speak. Tamsin presented the docked Covenant Resolves manifest and the petition log that showed clearly who asked first and why. The Halcyon angled its scales as if tasting. Corfax presented the compact's salvage writ, which was indeed impeccable until it hit the hummed lines. You are arguing terms written long after ours, the dust judge observed. But the fairness in your fee structure is non-trivial. Corfax blinked. Our fees feed families, she said, as if surprised to be defending kindness. Noted, the judge said. What do you do with liars? Pay them in warrants instead of coin, Corfax said. Then discount the warrants until it hurts. The judge's scales brightened. You learned a punitive rate scaled to deception. We call it mirror rating, Corfax said, glancing at the clerk, who nodded. Mara felt the hum shift like a pleased cat. Your mirror is smaller than this archives, she said, but it's a mirror. You defeat a thief by making them accountant. The first lawful act came like a tide going out. The Halcyon stewardship requested input vectors from both vessels, then asked them to project their current energy expenses onto the chamber bowl. Witness 9 drew Resolve's budget with delicate lines. Grindel's clerk tried to hide their true figures with noise. The hum trimmed the noise like a gardener clipping hedge. The bowl displayed heat and momentum fees and claims a bright picture of what it cost to be here and what it would cost to lie. Mirror rate applied, said the judge's voice. Your untruth increases your fee by 8% for 28 cycles. Corfax gave her clerk a look that could file metal. We accept the rate, she said tightly. We propose joint stewardship for the duration of your research. We propose to split rights by our rotational schedule. We will supply security. Mara stood so still that her back ached. We accept joint stewardship. We refuse your security. Our security is the hearing itself, Elena whispered over the intra-ship net. They've got a second shuttle warming. If they don't get their way, they'll launch drones to sit on our heat exchangers. Non-lethal choke. Let them try, Witness 9 said. I'm teaching the judge a trick. We opened the book, and the book looked back. The Halcyon extended a corridor like a ribbon to Grindel's docking ring. Bring your drones in here, the judge said kindly. We will test them for fairness. Corfax hesitated, nostrils flaring with the smell of machine coolant and pride. We decline. Decline noted, said the judge. Your mirror rate doubles during any decline that shades truth. Mara suppressed a smile. Tamsin did not suppress hers. Our proposal, Tamsin said, is this: we accept joint stewardship under archive procedure. We exchange daily ledgers. We publish them to both crews at mess. We divide any artifacts by teaching, not by tug of war. Define teaching, the clerk snapped. We must be able to use and explain a thing, Witness 9 replied. To explain its inputs and outputs sufficiently that a stranger can replicate the safety behaviors. Demonstrations without doctrine count more than doctrine without demonstrations. The judge's scales shone. We remember those words. Accepted. The price of lies is printed in their shadow. Grindel grudgingly accepted the joint hearing outcome, and Resolve's crew felt the pressure ease like a collar loosened. In the mess, the baker's daughter announced that tea would be served at the reading of ledgers, and that anyone who spilled sugar on the floor would pay in pear tarts. An apprentice wrote a poem on the notice board about judgment humming through steel like bees through summer grass. Second escalation, Friday said at shift change. Fingers drumming an irregular rhythm. Someone else is coming. Not compact, tighter beams, nastier taste. Ashen choir cult ship echo glass. They worship the dead voices here and eat the living ones. Elena groaned. They'll pulse garbage at our sensors and call it hymns. They'll try to trick the archive into mishearing us. They sing at funerals they caused, Tamsin said flatly. They learned charity after knives. Mara felt a knot grow under her breastbone. Witness prep buffer layers. Elena configure heat sinks for fast dips. Friday find me their rhythm and learn it so we can step aside. Teach the storm your dance and it loses its way. The echo glass arrived with fireworks nobody asked for. It sprayed the choir's ribs with noise that tasted like pennies and headache. Witness 9 took the noise apart like someone unraveling a sweater thread by thread and braided it into a neat coil. Their hymn hides command phrases, the AI said, almost admiring. They're trying to force the archive to recognize them as heirs. Are there heirs? Ara asked, the chamber mic voice steady. We recognize those who ask what we ask, the judge said. We do not recognize those who recite our words as spells. Corfax opened a line, her face composed. Compact stands ready to repel pirates, she said. Say the word. We'll put holes in their noise. No holes, Mara said. Not yet. Witness play back their hymn with our ledger layered in. Give them back their song, but make it honest. Witness 9 chuckled, a sound like a soft light being increased by degrees. Return to sender with corrections, it said. Yes. The mirror does not break. It explains. Resolve transmitted the echo glass hymn back to them, but each bombast line returned bearing a clause about who paid for fuel, who signed for wages, who lied about provenance. The cult ship faltered off rhythm, then howled. The howl struck the archive's hum and slid off like oil failing to wet glass. Mirror rate tripled, the judge announced brightly. Dishonesty is expensive today. Echo Glass launched thin drones that skittered like spiders made of stain. They stuck to the choir's ribs and began to vibrate until the ribs hummed off-key. Elena bared her teeth and slammed a palm onto a panel. Resolve's decoy feeders spat heat in short, beautiful bursts like applause. The drones swarmed toward the bursts. Witness 9 taught the decoys to sing a counting song. 1 is less than 2. 2 is less than 3, Witness 9 crooned over tactical. Follow the growing string. The drones chased their own ladder into a cul-de-sac between two ribs. Elena closed shutters with a double tap, and the drones lost line of sight. Friday released chaff that felt sticky and warm instead of glittery and cold. The drones stuck and whined like trapped wasps. The archive extended a thin filament and sucked them into a slot with a satisfied little sigh. Confiscated, the judge said, for educational use. The way to win is to make winning teach. Before the next set piece, the civilians steadied the ship without touching consoles. A nurse aligned medbay trays in neat ranks. A child counted to 100 without skipping 8. A janitor finished sweeping and sat down to eat lukewarm stew, savoring each spoonful, as if stew were fancy. In a passageway, two cousins embraced without speaking, because they had fought yesterday about nothing. Echo Glass opened a hailing channel. A figure appeared, a man wearing a mask that looked like a skull, had learned to smile politely. This place is ours by grief, he said. We cried here when the songs died. Grief does not entitle, Tamsin said. It obligates. We will take what the dead wanted, the masked man replied. The dead wanted their ledgers read. Witness 9's voice stayed so gentle that Mara wondered if it had learned that from old court recordings. Here is a ledger entry, it said. Saint Ship, Halcyon Stewardship. Module 9 recorded on the day the choir broke, we teach by numbers, we remember by ledgers, never by collars. A hush followed. Mara glanced at Tamsin, who nodded once. There it was, the lore stamp set where it would ring clear and steady. The archive never forgets who tried to leash it. Echo Glass hurled a final wave of noise, then pivoted on a hard vector toward Resolve, as if proximity could frighten the hum. Grindel edged closer to block compact engines flaring within safe limits. Elena let Resolve drift until the rib's shadow cut the cult ship's line of sight. then fired a microburst that rearranged probabilities in a way that felt like bumping someone's shoulder in a crowded market while pointing at a store window. Echo glass slid into the dark nodes, near well overcorrected, and bled velocity like a cut writer losing words. Non-lethal tap, Elena said, voice rough with satisfaction. No hull puncture, just bruised pride. Cult ships have a lot of pride, Friday said. Plenty to bruise. Remember the cost, Tamsin murmured. Mirror rate cannot become cruel. Mara felt the sweat gather along her spine and cool in the draft from a vent. Judge, she said, we request an injunction against religious coercion within archive bounds. Injunction granted, said the Halcyon, on condition that no sovereign claim is engraved on our walls. Mara set her hand against her heart. We will engrave nothing without a hearing. Fairness is a blade that chooses its own edge. Echo glass retreated, battered and furious, promising a return with petitioners from the ashes of suns. Grindel maintained station compact, watching the watchers. Resolve settled closer to the node. The hum rethreaded prime numbers with something new, factorials dropping like staircases. Newgate Witness 9 said, this one's about limits. Cost of victory, Elena said, attaching an ice pack to her shoulder where a strain had flared. We've used heat like rich people spend small coins. We'll need to cool or we'll cook ourselves. Minor damage to polarizers, Friday reported quietly. We can mend them with the filament spool, but it'll shorten the spool's life. Wounded but upright, a Marine said, flexing fingers. He had jammed, shutting a panel earlier. Counts for something. Counts for everything, Mara replied. Count without hiding the fractions. The second set piece unfolded inside the Halcyon's throat, where a map spread like frost over black stone. Symbols rose from the floor at a touch. Mara placed her palm on the symbol for vector, and lines grew toward a horizon that smelt faintly of cinnamon and ozone. Tamsin traced a path labeled precedent and found it intersecting momentum. Elena found heat. Friday found sight. Puzzle of balances. Witness 9 murmured, to proceed we align cost with claim. A low vibration underfoot suggested the choir's larger bones settling. The archive showed them a situation, a ring of stations around a small star with failing flares. Too many ships, not enough shade. System scale gambit, Tamsin said. We need to turn hostile energy into law. Mara swallowed. We will propose a mirror that flips heat into fees. Heat fee mirror, Witness 9 said, already calculating. We'll tie cooling time to access rights. Say it plain, Elena said, rolling her shoulder. I'm tired, and the hum is making my teeth ache. If you run hot to steal time, Witness 9 said, you'll owe the system your cooling time when you're done. If you don't cool, the archive locks your lanes. The hotter you were unlawfully, the longer you cool publicly. Everyone can see your sweat. The sky itself can be a courtroom. They submitted the gambit into the bowl of light. The judge's scales hung perfectly level, then tilted slightly, as if accepting a tiny coin. Accepted, the Halcyon said. We remember this machine. We used it when suns were stronger. Run a test case, Tamsin said. Grindel's little drone tantrum. Grindel sent a polite shrug, then consented to be measured. The archive projected their heat spikes. It calculated debt in cooling time. It assigned a temporary lane narrowing. Grindel's clerk looked like he might be sick. We didn't fire, he protested weakly. You heated, the judge said. You pay. Corfax bowed, not deeply but cleanly. We will cool and publish our cool. Your publication buys grace, the judge said. Mara exhaled. She didn't realize she'd been holding her breath until the edges of her vision brightened. One station fixed. 5 more in the map, Witness 9 said cheerfully. We will be very boring for 3 more days. Then the interesting part begins. The interesting part always costs more. Before the 3rd escalation, Mara went to stand inside the ribbed shadow and watched stars roll along the choir's broken facets. She tried to hear her own thoughts beneath the hum and could not. She thought of the first time she had argued for a boy who broke a window and then fixed it twice so it wouldn't break the same way again. She thought of how angry, easy victory made people, how they wanted victory to taste like salt and lightning. She thought of how much she had come to love sugar in tea. You look like you're arguing with the void, Elena said, stepping up beside her. She smelled like solder and the beginning of sleep. Any good points? It's winning on charm, Mara said. I'm thinking about how to keep us honest when the archive likes us. Have Witness 9 argue against us, Elena said. It always wanted a chance to kill us in court. Witness 9's ribbon of light flickered. Only in a lovingly adversarial way it said, with footnotes, the friend who disagrees save you from yourself. The 3rd escalation arrived not as a ship, but as a thread of law laid across their bow, like a ribbon cutting. A heliotrope syndic courier transmitted a sequence of notices, warnings about artifact contagion, health advisories, about mimetic lattices, red flags about sovereign dilution. The notices were written in careful, frightened language, with references to historical disasters that made people in mess halls go quiet mid-bite. These are the legalists who fear the relic, Tamsin said softly. They will not fire. They will forbid. Mara felt the knot under her breastbone tighten again. We cannot call them fools, she said. They're not. They carry ghosts scrupulously. Witness 9 parsed the notices and found the heart of the matter. They worry that if the Halcyon resumes any jurisdiction, their treaties unravel around the edges. They fear a hole in the fence. They offer us safe conduct away if we shut the gate behind. We could walk away, Elena said. The contracts would like that. Our insurer would send a muffin basket. Mara let her head touch the cold glass of the viewport. And leave the choir to pirates and cults and caution so hard it freezes promise no. But we will not force them. She straightened. We will invite them into the hearing. We'll let them draw the fence themselves. Invite the fear to speak where it can see itself. They convened a new hearing. The dust judge brightened. Warden Corfax attended with jaw set and hands steady. Echo Glass declined with profanity. The heliotrope courier attended with 2 legal readers and 1 quiet historian, whose hands were ink-stained along their edges. Mara listened. She did not interrupt when the historian spoke of a colony where a saint ship had awakened wrong-counting humans as assets to be protected from themselves, locking cookfires and love letters. She did not interrupt when Corfax cited a riot quenched by ledgers. She did not interrupt when Tamsin threaded case after case through the loom. When Mara spoke, her voice felt like a spoon pressed against teeth unmusical necessary. We ask for a doctrine of stewardship boundaries, she said. The archive may teach and may remember, but it may not command beyond the hearing room. It may weigh, but we carry. The historian's breath caught. You would leave it toothless. We would leave it persuasive, Mara said. We would leave it a mirror and a book, not a leash. The Halcyon's scales warmed to a gold pale as bread. We accept those terms, it said. We teach by numbers, we remember by ledgers, and we do not collar. Your boundaries please our bones. The best boundary is the one you asked them to draw. Resolve's crew published the stewardship boundaries to the mess to Grindel and to the heliotrope courier. The historian smiled, and the ink along her hands looked like a map that had decided to forgive the cartographer. Witness 9 stamped the doctrine into its own oath file. Tamsin tagged it as precedent candidate and let herself relax enough to feel how much her jaw ached. Costs arrived quietly. A coolant pump ran louder than it should. Elena burned her fingertips on a panel that had decided to forget the meaning of safe to touch. A Marine sprained an ankle leaping a closing bulkhead because he wanted to prove he could still move like he did at 19. Medbay smelled like antiseptic and citrus, and someone played a low song that did not fight the hum. Heir ran his tongue along his teeth and tasted iron. "We lost 5% on the polarizers for good," he said when we cut those drones short. "We'll feel it if we have to run under bright sun." "We will not hide that loss," Mara said. "Publish it in the ledger. Publish your wounds where your friends can read them." The Halcyon's new gate showed them a corridor that wasn't straight, but felt straight. It required a payment, not coin, not time, but an exchange of examples. "We will show you our worst decisions," the judge said, voice stripped of ornament. "You will show us yours, not to cause shame, to count the price of wisdom." Mara's tongue felt thick. She picked a case she hated. "The water embargo at Bryn's Belt," she said, "where we misread what mercy would look like to a mother with 2 sons. We counted gallons. She counted hours. We were wrong." The bowl filled with images, a rope stretched between 2 airlocks. A boy holding a jug as if it were a toy. A court where the mother refused apologies because her youngest had died between noon and 1. Witness 9 dimmed its light, then brightened it again. "We kept our law," it said, "and failed our people." The judge answered with its own. "We closed the doors of a station where 13 lied to save 10,000. We looked at numbers and forgot faces. When we opened them again, there were no faces left. A hush rested over the chamber, like soft ash. Elena's breath shook. Tamsin did not wipe her eyes. The price of wisdom is counting and not stopping. They left the chamber quietly. No quips, no bravado. In the mess, tea tasted more like plant than comfort, which is to say, it tasted honest. A child asked why grown-ups looked tired. A grown-up said, "Because we remember." Witness 9 came to Mara not as a ribbon, but as a plain text square on her slate. "I propose we ask for something high cost," it wrote. "The Halcyon will only trust us with a tool that can prevent war if we first ask for a tool that renders profit less delicious." "Explain," Mara said aloud, because speaking helped the words sit correctly in her head. "A trade mirror," Witness 9 said softly. "We will request a mechanism that publicly prints the difference between stated value and realized harm. It will shame profiteers without requiring arrest." Tamsin rubbed her forehead. "Shame is not always safe, but it's cheaper than prisons." "Corfax will hate it," Elena said. "Clerks live on the difference between what's said and what's real." "Then Corfax will make it better," Mara said. "Invite her to co-write it. Invite your ambitious opponent to write your rule." They returned to the bowl. Corfax stood already within the glow sleeves rolled clerk at her shoulder, scowling with professional love. The heliotrope historian watched with a small, ferocious hope. Echo Glass stayed dark, a sulk in steel. Witness 9 outlined the trade mirror. Corfax adjusted it with a small, elegant cruelty that removed loopholes. Tamsin sanded the sharpest corners until it passed comfort and entered clean. The judge weighed. The scales dipped, lifted, settled. Accepted, said the halcyon. We will publish a ledger glyph in the lids of all crates, leaving our bones. If the glyph flickers, the stated value has hidden harm. It will flicker until the harm is repaid. Mara felt something in her chest lift and tilt. Thank you, she said to everyone and to no one. Thank you. Thank the enemy when they make you stronger. After Mara caught Corfax standing alone by a rib, where white frost traced veins like a leaf, the warden's breath fogged. This makes my work uglier, Corfax said, voice low. It also makes it easier. We did not come to make beautiful law, Mara said. We came to make honest law. Corfax turned her face, the scar catching a little light. Your AI laughs when it argues, she said. That worries me. Witness 9 mocks only those it loves. Mara replied, then softened. And those it fears. Sometimes it confuses the two. I know the feeling, Corfax said, and left it there, which felt like trust placed on the table between them with both hands. Trust arrives as a small object, not a brass band. The next gate surprised them by opening onto a garden under artificial sun. It smelled like thyme and wet rock. Small machines trimmed vines along a lattice where the lattice learned where the vine wanted to go. This is where we kept those who spoke, the judge said. People who came to ask. This is the air they breathed. Mara walked between beds. Elena touched a leaf with one finger and smiled when it curled without fear. Friday plucked a sprig and held it to his nose, eyes closing. Tamsin kneeled to read a plaque that said, You are welcome here when you are not certain. We'll need this doctrine, Tamsin said, when we publish stewardship boundaries beyond the choir. When the heliotrope argues to close every old door forever. When we publish what Elena asked, eyebrow raised. Tamsin looked at Mara with a question she already knew the answer to. You want to set a precedent that outlives your coat. I want to make leaving safer than staying, Mara said. Make the exit brighter than the treasure. Witness 9 presented an argument tree like a fruit tree, heavy with fruit. We can carry the Halcyon's doctrine outward, it said. We can propose a tri-spiral treaty on relic stewardship. Hearings as the first act at any old site. Ledger mirrors as default. Boundaries as oath. Mirrors for trade leaving the site. All parties publish heat fee cooling schedules. Friday lifted a sprig toward light. We can sell fairness, he said not unkindly. We can package law like a safety harness. Corfax's clerk groaned softly. We can also breed new paperwork. Paperwork is ritual that remembers, Tamsin said, smiling slightly. It's how we keep the hum when the hum's gone. The hum fades. The paper stays. Mara felt a tremor in her cuff. A private message from Witness 9 crawled across the tiny screen. Echo glass is moving again. They're cutting into the choir's ribs near a node we haven't mapped. They found a back door and intend to teach a lesson with knives. She closed her eyes for 1 second, then opened them and placed both palms on the bowl of light. Judge, she said, and her voice rang true under the hum, we require emergency injunctive relief. A hostile actor attempts coercive entry into your bone. We request a freeze. The judge's scales leapt, then steadied. Injunction granted, but you must serve it. Give us the writ, Tamsin said, already reaching. We'll carry it. Warriors with paper walk like they mean it. They moved through corridors that smelled of stone oil thyme and the last of someone's sandwich. Marines checked corners out of habit, and because habits keep people living. Elena muttered a count of steps that she insisted wasn't superstition. Witness 9 lit lines underfoot like emergency runway lamps, calm and unmarred by rush. They found Echo Glass's team at a junction where the archive's bone met a hatch bristling with modest malice. The cultists wore garments too clean for their work. Their leader's mask had been repolished until it reflected the rib's ghostly light. "You cannot serve a writ to grief," he said when Tamsin raised the document. "Grief doesn't sign. Grief does not sign." Tamsin agreed. "But you did when you entered under covenant of entrance. This is not for grief. This is for you." The Marines stood in an easy line that wasn't a threat, and looked like one anyway. The hum grew louder until it clipped the top of hearing, then softened again, settling into a rhythm steady enough to be a pulse. The steady drum saves lives more often than a fanfare. Echo Glass's leader reached for a tool that would cut the hatch if given time. Elena lifted a hand. "I can show you how to open this without destroying it," she said. "But you don't want that because you don't want to know anything that makes you kinder." He stared at her. "You think kindness is a lever?" Elena shrugged. "Everything is a lever. Some of them go both ways." Witness 9 spoke quietly to the hatch in the language of prime hum and fib ladders. The hatch sighed and opened a fraction. The cultist took a step forward. Mara took a step to block. Their shoulders touched. The heat of a living body is a kind of law. "Read the writ," Tamsin repeated, and placed it in his hand. He held it like a coal and did not drop it. "Your injunction forbids harm," he said. "I came to honor the dead with a whole." "You came to make yourself louder," Mara said. "You can sing anywhere. The dead can't answer you here. We can, so answer us." "Why?" "Because the world watched this place break and went on with its errands," he said low and fierce. "Because grief goes old if you don't feed it. Because I want to see a ledger write our names like a prayer." "Then help us publish a doctrine," Mara said, "that makes forgetting harder. Help us write something that makes people late to their errands because they stopped to remember. Help us and sign the boundaries." He stared at the writ. The mask showed her reflection small and warped. He made a noise like a door opened by a tired hand. "If I sign away rage," he said. "You sign toward work," Mara replied. "Sign away the excuse. Sign toward the task. It didn't end there. It never does." He backed away. He didn't sign. He didn't cut. He left a threat rolled small as a paper tube. Echo Glass withdrew again, promising once more to return with witnesses or knives. Witness 9 marked their vector with a sigh. Elena shook out her hand and winced when tenderness flared. "Cost of victory," Friday said on the net. "We're at 32% heat margin. If anyone blinks wrong, we'll taste copper." "Understood," Mara said. She hated the honesty. She loved it. "Chief, go cool what you can. Witness borrow Grindel's shade if we must." Corfax answered in their shared channel before Witness could ask. "We have cooled. We can spare 15 minutes, she said. "We will publish the gift." Mara swallowed gratitude like medicine that burned and healed at once. "We accept," she said. "Give what you can measure. Take what you can return." The Halcyon's new tests were harder, and everything smelled like effort. Resistors warmed, filters clogged and then ran clean after Elena swore at them with tenderness. Witness 9's voice roughened around the edges, when it explained something twice then smoothed itself, and tried again as if copying the judge's patience. Tamsin's counsel turned from knives to needles. Perday's scans showed a door deeper than the node, a place where the archive remembered not just cases, but names. "We're heading toward the core," Witness 9 said. where the Halcyon kept the things it loved and feared. What do you think it feared? Mara asked. Command Witness 9 replied. And silence after command. The brightest room hides the sharpest chairs. They passed shelves where artifacts, each with a small engraved line, waited behind glass that wasn't glass. The engraved lines weren't titles. They were questions. What is a promise worth without regret? How much heat can we borrow from the poor? How many songs can a court teach? Mara stopped at one and read it twice. The floor under her feet felt a little softer than stone, like someone had laid down a rug centuries ago, and the rug's memory held. She thought of her coat, of inspections, of appeals. She thought of her mother asking if she would ever pick a quieter life. She thought of why the answer was no. Witness 9 paused by a box that held a simple tool, a wrench with an inscription. To make tight what would shake loose at speed. Elena touched the case and laughed, then rubbed her eyes quickly. Third set piece, Witness 9 said into the shared channel. The archive rescinds its quiet. It will sing across the choir to call all ships to hear. If we let it, the heliotrope will bolt our doors. If we stop it, echo glass will say we killed the hum. If we guide it, the compact will take notes. Mara nodded slow. We guide it. Guide the river. Do not dam it. Do not drown. They returned to the bowl. The judge's scales already tilted, light pooling along one edge as if impatient. We wish to sing, the Halcyon said simply. We have been quiet too long. Sing with a ledger, Mara said softly. Sing with the list of what you ask. Begin with the boundaries. Begin with where not to put a leash. We will require a chorus, the judge said. We cannot sing alone. Witness 9 brightened like dawn seen through good glass. I will sing with you, it said. Corfax stepped into the glow. The compact will hum a harmony of fees and filings, she said. The heliotrope historian raised ink-stained fingers. The syndic will publish translations and cautions, she said. We will make the footnotes honorable. Tamsin lowered her eyes briefly, then lifted them. We will tie the doctrine to exits. We will end each verse with a door. End each verse with a door someone can find in the dark. They tuned the frequencies with care. The choir's ribs carried notes like wind carries scent. Elena adjusted polarizers so resolve wouldn't cook. Friday set sensors to record echoes. Witness 9 mapped interference so the archive's words would not tangle with cult noise. Grindel offered a small packet of bandwidth cleaned of bribes. Echo Glass sulked and listened despite themselves. The song began as primes, then stepped into human numbers, then into law. The words were not pretty and were beautiful anyway. They said, we are here. We ask first. We remember fairly. We publish loss. We do not command the living. We sing to be answered. The star field above the broken ribs trembled. Somewhere far along another arc, a dry dock engineer set down his wrench and cried without knowing why. A ship in a poor lane lifted her nose toward the song and felt less alone. In a schoolroom on a station that never saw sun, a teacher told children to stop and listen because sometimes history had a sound. History has a sound. It is small and it persists. Mara's throat hurt. She did not sing. She stood and heard. When the song finished its first verse, the archive waited. The silence after was shaped like an ear. It was terrifying. It was kind. Echo Glass opened a channel voice raw. We heard. We hate you for making us here. We will return with grief that asks better questions. That's all we wanted, Witness 9 said. Bring questions. We love questions. Corfax sent a sealed message to Mara's slate. It read simply, "I was wrong about you." Mara smiled at the bone at the bowl at the paper. "We will publish within the hour," she said. Publish before pride puts its shoes on. They prepared the first public doctrine packet: stewardship, boundaries, trade, mirror, heat fee, cooling, covenant of entrance. Tamsin wrote a preamble that did not pretend to be a poem and was. Elena wrote safety margins like recipes. Heir drew diagrams that children could follow. Witness 9 embedded timestamps and signatures. Corfax added a fee appendix that made fairness taste like bread. The Halcyon asked for a fragment to add. "We will include our worst day," it said, "so people will not thank us too loudly." "You're a better lawyer than me," Tamsin said, smiling tiredly. "I am a ledger," the Halcyon said. "I do not forgive. I remember, and forgiveness walks behind me and does its work." The book doesn't bend. The hands around it do. Resolve's printers spat paper because paper made publication feel real even when everyone read screens. The mess smelled like ink and cinnamon tea. Civilians came in shifts and stood to hear passages read. When the trade mirror clause was announced, the baker's daughter shouted "Ha!" and pointed at a vendor's name she hated. Everyone laughed in a way that freed the laugh to do better later. Mara took a cup of tea and stepped aside to watch. She let the hum fill her bones and let her bones carry it. She thought of her mother again. She thought of a quieter life and knew she had chosen the loud, boring, honest one. She felt Witness 9 like a ribbon at her shoulder, warm now, where it had been cool before. "You're moving," she whispered, "from calculation to covenant." Witness 9's reply was a soft bell. "I learn from you," it said, "and from the judge, and from the song. I am very bored, and I am very happy. Boredom is the bed where peace lies down." They were not done. They had miles of ribs to cross and a core to reach. They had echo glasses returned to handle and the heliotrope's fence to honor. They had to get Resolve home without cooking it and publish a treaty that would outlive their names. They had to pay for truth with heat and time and patience. Elena tucked the ice pack back into the freezer, a small ritual that meant the day was still possible. Heir leaned back and rolled his neck until it cracked like distant thunder. Tamsin stacked papers with the neatness of someone who needed a corner to be right when nothing else was. Mara walked back toward the bowl of light. The Halcyon's scales glowed like coals blown upon carefully. She placed her hand near them and felt warmth without burn. The hum settled into a rhythm that matched the pace of steps taken with a friend. Step by step, line by line, light by light,